Now, if you're tired of spam calls, you're not alone. We are tired as well. Last year alone, telecom operators received 9 lakh complaints compared to 3 lakh received in 2020. So 3 in 2020, 9 in 2022. We don't have data for 2023 just as yet. Remember, this data was shared by the government in Lok Sabha. So this is government data, and this is the data of complaints that have been received and not actual pesky calls or spam calls that have been made. What should the government do? What should the authorities do? And what can you do to protect yourself? Let's understand from Lloyd Matthias, who's an angel investor joining us at this point in time. Lloyd, thank you for taking time out. I think first thing first, what can a customer, consumer, average Indian do to protect themselves from pesky calls?
Thanks, Shweta, for having me on your show. I think the sad news is, frankly, very little. While if you go to the TRAI, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India's site, it clearly says that you can report any unsolicited call to a number 1909. And I know a lot of people have done it. I myself have done it a few times. That doesn't really prevent, or that doesn't end the menace of spam calls. The reality is that people who indulge in spam, telemarketers and such like, they keep changing the number series. So if you block one number, or if you report one number, I presume over time, TRAI will delist that number, but the menace springs from a new source. I think the reality is that there are a lot of leaks. Each one of us at various points in time give our numbers to various people. You go to a restaurant, you fill a feedback form, and I think a lot of this number is then sent to unscrupulous or people who use it for promotions, and therefore, in a sense, it's unfortunately a reality of the life we live.
So, Lloyd, hi, Karthik here. And, you know, at News 9, we really want to run this campaign and this crusade, which wants to ensure that India becomes spam-free. In fact, we are starting this movement called Spam-Free India. And we really want to go after the folks who are not doing their jobs in preventing these spam calls from ending. So where does the buck stop according to you? Does it stop at the telcos who make enormous revenues from these pesky calls? Does the buck stop at the regulator? Does the buck stop at the Ministry of IT and Telecom? Where does the buck really stop? And who do we as a country, as citizens, as crusaders, as journalists need to go after?
Thank you, Karthik. I think great question. I think the reality is that the fault lies everywhere down the line. While the regulator, in effect, has put in mechanisms in place, I think the ability to enforce these mechanisms brutally doesn't exist, or maybe the will doesn't exist. Two, I think telcos are, in a sense, complicit, not entirely, because they sell numbers in bulk to a lot of telemarketers and a lot of promotional agencies, and they don't do adequate due diligence. And thirdly, like I said, as normal citizens and consumers, we give our numbers out too easily to too many people. Right? So our numbers find their ways into various databases and data lists. As a solution, I think one thing that can work, and I generally believe in this world of social media, we should use it much more, is to name and shame telecallers. Which means every time you get a number from a pesky call and he identifies himself from one bank or a financial institution or a real estate company, I think it's good to take it to social media, share the number saying, I've been getting these repeated calls from XYZ organization, this is the number, and I'm paying. I think taking it to the public square, naming and shaming is a good start, right? Because people over time recognize there's a big risk to their reputation. And I'm sure corporations and companies that indulge in this will backtrack a bit.
Always good to have a marketer and always good to have a sane voice on the show. Lloyd, I think let's start that. We'll take your input. We will start naming and shaming. I think at News9, we will start tweeting screenshots of spam calls that we receive. Because we are sick of them. And you joining us on the show today also suggests that you are equally sick of them, Lloyd. So join us in this movement. And every time we do a series, every time we try to take on a telco or the TRAI or organizations, corporations, companies which are encouraging these pesky calls, we'd love to have you back on the show, Lloyd.
Thank you, Karthik. Thank you, Shweta.
Thank you, Lloyd.
This is a laudable move. We really need to get rid of this menace. It is serious.
We will. Together we will get rid of this.
Together we will. And just as we were talking, I think I've received at least one such call from one such person trying to sell me a product that I do not need. Remember, government is also trying to build a digital consent acquisition facility. We don't know when that's going to happen. We don't have numbers for 2023 yet. But one thing is for sure, and it's a fact that people are waking up to it more and more. Given the number of complaints that are on the rise, it was 30,000 something, it was 3 lakh something, it's 9 lakh as of last year. This year it's going to be far higher whenever the numbers come out. We'll bring you that.
So Shweta, let's take this campaign forward and
Absolutely.
let's urge our viewers here who are watching us today and will subsequently watch this this bulletin on YouTube, and let's request our viewers to actually send us screenshots of spam calls that they have received, and along with that, perhaps if they could send us the name of the organization which apparently the spam caller represents, and we'll start putting it out on our show and on our social media as well.
Absolutely. We will be taking this campaign up very, very seriously. You can start sharing screenshots of the phone calls that you receive, numbers with us down at the bottom of this video in the chat box. We'll take them up. We will take up your requests and also try and answer all your questions with respect to pesky calls and how to avoid them in future. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition. Thanks very much for watching.